I change things, still I fear the answer's no. In this fucked up world in which I feel I stand alone. All this hate that I feel for you, my one true enemy, once was blind, but now I see. It makes me question, why do we choose to live this way? I try to free my mind from what's not meant to be. It makes me question why.
You know, occasionally I will get questioned about why I've never really discussed the Sonic Advance games like this whole time. And you know what? That is not my fault. Because in my experience, it seems like nobody really remembers that the Sonic Advance games exist. You hear them brought up occasionally, but they're not really discussed that much. To be fair, a lot of Sonic games on the handhelds aren't really discussed at all. I mean, you had a lot of them on the Game Gear, and those are like not talked about by anyone who's not me, you know? So it's only natural that the advanced games would kind of carry over the same thing. I guess Sonic's just never really been a handheld platform, you know? And it's not like the games are bad. And actually, come to think of it, most of the handheld Sonic games are alright. At the very least, some are actually outstanding. And the Sonic Advance games are up there. So, you know, let's talk about these now. The early 2000s were a really, really weird time to be a Sonic fan. And I know some of you weren't there, because it occurs to me how fucking old I am getting. And I had someone in the stream who's there regularly, you know who you are, I know you're watching this, who was born in 2001, which is when the original Sonic Advance came out. So, way to make me feel old. Damn it. Anyway, what I was trying to say was that the early 2000s were weird, because there was this weird transitionary period where we're like, wait, Sonic's gonna be on not Sega. It just didn't feel right. But here we were, Sonic Advance coming out for the Game Boy Advance. But yeah, so the games were coming out on a Nintendo platform, and it was just an odd to think about. Now we have Sonic on a Nintendo platform, and there wasn't really anything bad about that, because part of me feels, especially looking back now, that one of the reasons why a lot of the older handheld Sonic games were uploaded that they were on the Game Gear. And really, nobody had one of those. Some people had one of those, but then nobody had one of those. Like how many people do you know that actually had one of those? Most people had a Game Boy, and you know it. Okay, this is a simple fact. The Game Gear did not sell nearly as well as the Game Boy, or the GBA, as the case might be. So putting Sonic on a more popular handheld platform would certainly help this. But as I recall, what people got a little more excited about when it came to the Advanced series in general was that it was a return to form. You see, what we really hadn't seen in a while when it came to Sonic was a side-scroller. Keep in mind, the last Sonic side-scroller that was released prior to Sonic Advance was Sonic Blast, of all things, on the Game Gear.
What happened to your review of it?
I don't have to answer to you. You're a doll who won't leave my house. Why do I have to justify anything to you? It had been 5 years since we got an original Sonic side-scroller, and no, Sonic Jam doesn't count. Yes, I know it was released in 1997 after Sonic Blast, but it was just a collection of older Sonic side-scrollers. You can't count that as an original, side-scroller release. No, it doesn't work that way. So my point is that fans were excited, but also confused, because, it was an original Sonic title, a side-scroller, returned to form, but it was also on a Nintendo console. It was very weird. Fortunately for us, the original Sonic Advance is actually a pretty solid game. Flawed, but still good. And much like its predecessors on the Genesis, it is definitely a return to form when it comes to Sonic side-scrolling action. That's really all it is. It's just Sonic going from point A to point B, and he's got 3 friends along with him. You can play as Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, or Amy. And yeah, they included Amy in this one, which is a pretty nice addition, More characters, more variety, different ways to play the game. Each character is unique. We like that. Level design is a little standard, but hey, it's all good. And gameplay is solid. It feels like a classic Sonic title. The physics can be a little strange sometimes. they're imperfect, but overall, it's actually a lot of fun to play, just purely for the fact that it feels like a classic Sonic game. It was nice to see Sonic return to his roots, and it was something that we needed because, let's be realistic, the first iterations on platforms that were not Sega, when it came to mainstream 3D Sonic games, were not necessarily ideal, but we'll talk about those another time. But Sonic Advance is definitely a positive note in the history of the Sonic series. Visually, the game is, well, okay, I was about to say it's good, but it bothers me. See, this is making me feel so old, and you just need to know that. Because I don't see this game the way everyone else sees this game. Let me try to explain this. During the time that the Sonic Advance games were released, I was also first really getting involved in the internet, and one of my first things that I did was I got involved in the Sonic community, more specifically, the fan character side of the Sonic community. Some of you know that about me, that I used to have a Sonic fan character, and I guess I'll always have a Sonic fan character. It's not like he went away or something. His name was Darkness. I don't know what you expected. Okay, like don't give me that look. That's where the name comes from. But so I guess my roots are more firmly placed there than I thought. But how this relates to Sonic Advance is that I remember at the time there was a bit of a rift in the spriting community when it came to which sprites were better to work with, which sprites were preferable, Genesis or Advance. Because there's very real differences when it comes to the Genesis sprites and the Advance sprites. I remember always preferring Genesis, and in fact, most people would tell you that Genesises were better when it came to working with them because they were larger. You were more able to animate them. There were more pixels to work with. Advanced sprites are very small, likely to facilitate the fact that it was just built for a smaller screen. And as such, they have less shading. They're actually not shaded as well as the Genesis games are. It's hard to tell looking at them, because you think, well, Darkness, they look a lot nicer. And yes, because what they lack in shading, they make up for in animation. The animations themselves in Advance are really smooth, and this is actually one of the things that people liked about the Advanced sprites whenever they were making fan characters, was because the people who preferred the Advanced sprites were often the ones who also made animations with their characters, because Advanced sprites are just so much better when it comes to animations. They are really, really smooth. And overall, the games do look good because at the end of the day, it makes more sense for them to have less shading and, you know, smaller pixels and everything, because they were built for a smaller screen. When you play it all blown up on your computer screen, yeah, it doesn't look great. But when you put it down on a GBA, it looks perfectly fine. It looks good. So, yeah, the graphics are only bad if you don't view them in the way they were meant to be viewed. Really, I don't know why I went on this tangent. But now you all know that I'm a total nerd. From a sound perspective, the game is fine. Really agonizingly fine. The music simply isn't that memorable. The sound effects are fine. But the music itself, I feel, could have been a lot better. It's definitely, you know, no classic Sonic 3 and Knuckles soundtrack here. Level design is passable, and when it comes to the plot, well, Eggman has taken all the Chaos Emeralds and is turning all the little animals into robots, and is now threatening the world because there isn't much of a plot here, is what I'm trying to say. It exists to get the job done. And I think that's my big issue with Sonic Advance. It plays itself outrageously safe. It doesn't do anything unique. It doesn't do anything bold. If you take it and look at it and play it, you will find the most standard stock Sonic platformer in the history of the series. And I mean that. Now, to say that that's a bad thing is bizarre because, honestly, a big problem with a lot of Sonic games, especially more recent ones, that they keep trying to put ridiculous, annoying gimmicks on top of them. And when it comes to Sonic Advance, I can admire it for its purity. It is what it is, and it doesn't try to be anything else. And because it was released at a time when we hadn't had a side-scroller like this in a long time, you know, it's hard for me to get mad about that. In addition to that, I have one more complaint. The different characters are all unique and I like that. Tails and Knuckles are about what you'd expect. Knuckles has a punching move and Tails has a little melee attack, that's always nice. But Amy sucks. And I need you to know that. The main issue I have with her is that she doesn't work at all like the other characters, and it's a fairly big deal when she's 1 out of 4. Her issue is the way she jumps. You see, Amy jumps, but doesn't roll into a ball when she does it. This is relevant because the only reason the others kill enemies whenever they jump is because they're rolled into a ball. But Amy doesn't do that. So if she tries to jump on an enemy without using her melee attack in midair, in other words, pressing a second button, she'll hurt herself. This means that it is so obnoxious to play as Amy, and there's such a huge learning curve with her, and I hate that. And despite me complaining, most of these complaints have to do with the game being simple. And at the time, I think simple was a good way to go about it. So naturally, they took what they learned from Sonic Advance and put all that into Sonic Advance 2 and made a much better game. I don't like Sonic Advance 2. You know, it's not bad, and I appreciate what they tried to do, but no. No, not this way, guys. I'm sorry, but not this way. It's a playable experience, but alright, here's what they did. Sonic Advance 2 plays very similarly to Sonic Advance 1. There's one major difference in that there's a huge focus on speed here. Sonic and company didn't move all that fast in the first Sonic Advance. They moved at a decent pace, but it wasn't like outlandishly quick. Sonic Advance 2 is sort of like the Sonic Unleashed of the Sonic Advance series, you know what I mean? But I mean, Sonic is just booking it. In fact, all the characters are like this. They move extremely quick. Almost dauntingly so. Like, the gameplay difference in that regard is almost jarring. There's a huge focus on moving faster over standard platforming, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. I feel like Sonic should be a fair balance of both. Speed definitely should be there, but I think Sonic Advance was a bit better about that in that regard. This time they were just like, he must be moving at Mach 3 all the time, no matter what. And that is fun, kind of, but it gets old kind of quick. Visually, the game's about the same, and the music is, again, about the same. So, you know, there you go. A plot line is that Eggman has taken all the Chaos Emeralds and is turning the animals into robots. Also, he's kidnapped all your friends and Cream's mother. Because... And yes, I mentioned Cream. Cream the rabbit, specifically. She's a new character. This was the first game she was ever in, and honestly, I don't mind Cream. Some people seem to have an issue with her, but I personally always thought she was a pretty cute little character. And she's fun to play as, mostly because she's kind of reminiscent of Super Tails. Y'all remember him? Alright, so Cream has this Chow, right, named Cheese that follows her around. And she can tell Cheese to go murder enemies. It's hilarious. So Cream is actually kind of fun to play as. The characters besides Sonic are all unlocked as you play the game as you rescue them. You get actually unlocked Cream first, go figure. And you'll get Tails, Knuckles, and Amy's in the game, but you have to... And I don't understand this. Okay, so in order to unlock Amy, you have to get all the Chaos Emeralds with all the characters. You complete the game 100% basically, and that unlocks Amy. I don't dislike Amy or anything. I mean, I hated her in the original Sonic Advance because she wasn't fun to play, but like, was she that sought after that you thought she could be the secret character? Like, I don't understand. The bosses are also changed up. Like, see, alright, so in the first Sonic Advance, the bosses were pretty standard. You know, Eggman would show up, and he would have, you know, a giant pogo stick or something, because... Anyway. But here, the bosses are actually moving, and you actually have to chase after them, which is very reminiscent of the boss of Mushroom Hill in Sonic & Knuckles. You remember that one? Sonic is chasing after him. Like, every single boss in the fucking game is like this. And I understand what they were trying to do. They were really trying to highlight that Sonic is a mobile character. He moves fast, he moves constantly, that's what Sonic does. Great. Problem with this. This doesn't work all the time for everything. And the reason why that was so cool in the Mushroom Hill boss is because it was unique, and no other boss really did that. Here, every fucking boss does this! And, you know, this gets annoying and old pretty quick. The first time it happened, it was pretty cool. Like, hey, I'm chasing after Eggman, that's nice. But when all the bosses do that, it means nothing. And honestly, it only highlights that this sort of boss where you're chasing after them is actually really fucking obnoxious, and nobody likes it. Like, do you like having to constantly ramp up speed and chase after the goddamn boss you're supposed to be fighting? Like, it's really freaking annoying. In addition, it's also tedious because it's not hard. It's not hard because in order to deal with the fact that this would be difficult if it was a standard boss fight and you couldn't get any rings, they give you rings all the time. So you're never really in danger of dying. So the bosses just drag on and on until you finally destroy him. And I don't get this. Like it's just not fun. Like I'm sorry, it's not enjoyable and it bothers me. And then even at that, the actual levels have a problem. My big issue is that, alright, so you highlighted Sonic's speed, and that's great. Then why, pray tell, did you not design the levels to be a little more forgiving with regards to reaction time? Alright, so it's been fairly common practice since the beginning that certain levels, especially later levels in the games, in Sonic games, would have bottomless pits. In fact, that's just a general platformer thing. Every single platformer, basically in existence, will have a point in the game where there's bottomless pits, where if you fall into the pit, you're dead instantly. Sonic is no exception to this. Okay, fine. Let me tell you something. Sonic Advance 2 got just a little carried away with this crap, because they put these fucking things all over the place, and it is so cripplingly it just doesn't care about you. Like, it just laughs in your face every time it happens, because you have no chance to react with some of these. It brings the game down to a memorization system, where you just have to know that certain things are going to happen, where you just have to know to hit the jump button within a fraction of a second, otherwise you're fucking screwed. And if you're gonna make the game all about speed, you can't be doing that, because nobody likes memorization games, okay? No one. No one. Naturally, memorization is always going to be a part of gaming, because the more you play a game, the more you remember. You remember parts of a game, you get way better at it because you know those parts are coming up. Okay, that's fine. That shouldn't be a fucking requirement, though. I shouldn't have to just know that some things are going to happen. The first time through this game, especially when you get to the ice level, or God help you, the sky level, if you're going to make the game about speed, you have to give us time to react. You have to let us know things. You know, you can't just throw us in there and then just have pits randomly. It's not fun. It's not challenging either. It's just irritating. Because how was I supposed to know that was gonna happen? I wasn't. And it really highlights a big issue when it comes to Sonic Advance 2. And Sonic Advance 1 had this problem as well, but it was to a lesser extent because, you know, it was a slower game. But here, it's huge, and that's the draw distance. There just isn't enough of a draw distance on a screen this small to give you time to see what's coming up. And when the game is all about speed and running as fast as possible, that can be a big deal. You're always at risk of running into an enemy. You're always at risk of running into a pit. It's just brutal, and it's just not fun to play. And, you know, it's not the worst game in the world, but it's definitely the weakest of the Advance series, by far. And before we end this review, of course I'm going to talk about Sonic Advance 3. Easily the best of the Advance series, by far. And I'm being very serious. Sonic Advance 3 does it right. And as a result, I don't actually have that much to say about it. Go figure. I love that. When I don't have anything to complain about, I have problems talking. It's a flaw. Okay, so Sonic Advance 3 does some interesting things that just seem to work. To begin with, from a gameplay perspective, it sort of fuses the first two Sonic Advances together. The game is faster than Sonic Advance 1, but not as BS as Sonic Advance 2. And it creates this happy medium, where I'm not running into pits for no reason, and getting really mad about it. So, good on that. Level design is a lot of fun. There are 3 acts, actually, to go through, as well as the boss, which is an interesting change. We haven't had 3 acts in a while, since the original Sonic 1, I believe. The bosses are no longer being chased after, and they're pretty large, so that's always nice. The music is actually kind of memorable. There's a Chow Garden, small, but it's there, so that's a thing. And a hub world, which I don't fully understand, but there's like bonus levels and stuff, so it's actually kind of fun. And then, I think the best thing this did is it took the fact that it had all these characters in the game and made use of that, which was a brilliant frickin' idea. Basically, you could team characters up. Before, you could only play as one character at a time, but now it's more like it was in like Sonic 2, whenever they introduced Tails and he would follow Sonic around. Yeah, except you can make any team you want out of the 5 characters: Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Cream, and Amy. And now you can combine them with different attributes, and they do different things based on who they're paired up with. I mean, this is a great idea, and I love this. It actually reminds me specifically of Knuckles Chaotix. Knuckles Chaotix did something very similar. I think the major difference here is that you're not attached with a ring chain thing, and it's more like Sonic 2, where you just follow each other around. I mean, it's great, and I love the fact they made the gameplay way more dynamic in this regard. Oh yes, and of course I have to talk about the plot. You can't get around this plot. All right, so Dr. Eggman is... Oh, this is actually a little bit different. Okay, somehow... And this... Stop me if this sounds weird, because I'm friggin' it. Somehow, Dr. Eggman induced, like, an artificial chaos control, and then, like, moved everyone around. Or something. Like, it's very strange. This game ties directly into another game, Sonic Battle, Gamurl, and I hate that name, which has the data from Emerl, which was a character from Sonic Battle, a game I will doubtlessly have to talk about very soon, because now you're all going to start asking me about it. That being said, your goal is to find all your friends, and to, stop Robotnik from taking over the world with Gamurl and everything, so, okay, so maybe the plot does kind of boil down to basic Sonic standards, but it required more explanation is what I'm trying to say. Oh, and of course, Eggman is doing all this because... Real talk for a second, if you're gonna play any of the Sonic Advance games, I definitely recommend you try 3. 3 is easily the most fun, easily the most memorable, and easily the most interesting to play. Sonic Advance, the first one, it's basic, so, I'm not sure whether it'd be worth playing just because you've probably played it before, it's not that different from other Sonic games. And Sonic Advance 2 is just really frustrating, so it's just not that much fun in my mind. But Sonic Advance 3 gets it right, and I actually kind of wish that Sega would make more games in the style. The idea of teaming up and, using everyone's different abilities and strengths and weaknesses and stuff to get through different obstacles, and changing the team's layout because, not everyone can do the same things. I mean, that's an interesting idea. I hope they do that again someday. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.